groups formed into resident action groups, and that was the case there. And so the priest's involvement was probably a help as well. But anyway, they had he encouraged the people to form the residents' action group, and then they decided that they would ask the Builders Labourers Union to come in and give them some assistance. And the union again took up the cudgels, and that area was retained as there's a lot more public housing. That battle went on for a long time too, because some of it was held by the federal government, some by the state government, and at the time that was going on, Aston was still the premier, the Liberal premier, and was not interested in public housing. He was interested in developers being able to have that land and build the commercial high-rise. And there was also local government, so 3 levels of government, so that in any event, Whitlam was elected federally, and Aston finally was gotten rid of in New South Wales, and the local government was fine, and so there was more public housing built in that area. So that again was a real community effort, and the union was involved. Unions now don't have as much power. I should just say that the membership of that union was very supportive of the leadership. The union had been in power for some 10 years before the first green ban was placed, the one at Kelly's Bush. And when the union leadership when the rank and file movement came to power, they promised to do various things if they won power in the union. And most of it revolved around workers' rights on the job. Something about the appalling conditions in which builders labourers worked, the appalling wages that they suffered, and the very real health risks of people working on multi-storey buildings. And so when they came to power, they spent the first almost a decade working very hard to achieve all of the things that they set out when they were campaigning to win the leadership of the union, and did a fantastic job actually, because the wages increased rapidly, really, and safety improved, and the conditions on building sites were improved. I'm sorry, I'm smiling to myself about some of the tactics that they used to improve some of the conditions. All right, just one small story if I can, but some of the, there were, as well as in Sydney itself, of course, in Newcastle, what some of the builders' labourers did was to rig up some showers, hoses, in other words, at the town hall. And then they set these up saying that they had no showers on the job. They worked in very dirty conditions, and they really needed to have some better conditions on the job so people could clean themselves up before they left for the day. And so they rigged these up and said, well, we're going to keep showering here until we get some decent showers on the job. And so people know the conditions we work anyway. So that was, they won showers on the job in that way. But there were all sorts of tactics used like that. But the reason I'm saying something about the wages and conditions and safety issues was because the union, when they started undertaking the green bans, and there ended up being 42 in this area, they had the support of the union membership, without which, of course, they couldn't have achieved any of these aims. The reason they had it is because the union had also worked on all of those things that were so important in their work, the daily working lives of the members, and so they were supportive of the leadership. The other thing was, it was a very democratically run union. There were very frequent union meetings of the members, delegates meetings, meetings on the job, and it was democratically run. And one of the other things that they introduced, I just mentioned, which we thought it could apply in other areas, was they introduced what's called limited tenure of office. They said that nobody could remain a union official in that union in a position for longer than 2 terms, because when people remained in those positions, often they then ended up staying on, and it became more for their own benefit than the benefit of the members of the union. So that was another democratic issue that was raised and adopted by the union. So that's something about the green bans. They did exist in all sorts of areas. If people will indulge me, I just want to tell you one other story which almost nobody knows about, and it annoys the life out of me when people refer to it. without any mention of the fact that unions were involved. At one stage, while Judy Peterson was Premier of Queensland, it was decided it would be a good idea to explore for oil on the Great Barrier Reef. There was a bloke called John, I think, Boost, I think it's spelled something like B-U-I-S-T, who was a marvellous environmentalist and became very concerned about what was proposed for the Great Barrier Reef. And Judy Peterson was saying, oh no, we'll only do it in part of it, but anyway, it was going to be, they were going to explore for oil on the reef. And this John Boost got Judith Wright involved in that campaign. And it was Judith Wright who said, we need to involve the unions in this campaign. And Judy Peterson was determined that the exploration was going to go ahead, and the unions did become involved in it, and they decided that no ship that came, or vessel that came to Australia to take any part in exploration of the Great Barrier Reef would not be serviced in this country. And that was what won the Great Barrier Reef being retained as it is.
Ooh,
And
woohoo!
almost nobody knows that story, and I suppose I wanted the chance to tell it because every time I hear people that, it being said, and I recently heard something about Judith Wright, and she was marvellous. She was very helpful in that campaign because she was the one who suggested that they needed to get the unions involved in order to protect it. And I understand there was actually a vessel on its way here, and when they knew that the maritime unions would refuse to service any vessel, they turned tail and went back. And so anyway, that's a bit of a story of the green bands. And there were a lot in other parts of Australia, in Hobart, in Western Australia, in Queensland, so they were all over the place. And thankfully, largely, they were successful long term. I hand it over to Wendy.
Woohoo!
Thanks, Judy, and thanks, Adriana, for inviting me to talk also today. But Judy has just listening to her talk then, an amazing knowledge of the Greenback period, but also just other stories and important stories like the one about the Great Barrier Reef. I mean, history doesn't get so easy. And so, I think it's really valuable to hear this. Look, I thought Judy's given a really good overview, and I thought I would just talk a little bit about how I became involved in the Greenlands, and then squatting that I was involved with in relation to the Greenland Actions Cross. And I'd just like to, of course, also just to congratulate every person in the UN. This is so important, and unless people take action, nothing can change. It is really daunting because, unfortunately, it'd be wonderful if we had a meeting here tonight and have supporters labels and they could declare a green ban, but it's not going to happen now. So people are trying to come up with other ways and other strategies, and that's where it's going to be right now. Now, my own connection with the BLs was actually began in 1970 when I was a student editor of Structure, and we were really under the gun because we were really challenging censorship laws. And at that stage, some Buddhist labourers agreed that they would distribute Structure, even though it was a student newspaper. I never said it on to Buddhist labourers, and that's how I got to know them. And also because just like now, later on with the news and some of the Indian countries was actually quite favourable when it came to green bans. But back when the union was the union was militant, as Judy said, and militant unions always get nasty media coverage. That's not new. And so, it was really hostile coverage. So we were reporting on some of the strikes.
Jenny,
I got to know an organiser.
Wendy,
Back to something Judy
can you, yeah, that's better.
Judy